Welcome to the Liminal Witch podcast, a space for those who walk the edges, dance in the thresholds, and find magic in the spaces between. I'm Summer Star. I'm a liminal witch, a ritual goods crafter, and I'm an intuitive reader here in Salem, Massachusetts. If you've ever felt like your practice doesn't fit neatly into one category or tradition, or if you feel pulled to the provocative edges of the unknown, then this podcast is meant for you. This episode is meant to be my first daily short, which, as I'm hitting record and I'm considering everything floating around in my mind, it probably won't be very short at all. Because today I feel like it's really important to poke at a topic that holds me back just as much as I imagine it holds other people back. And that's this fear of judgment and rejection. It's that need to wait for something to feel perfect before we act on it. It's sort of waiting for that future romanticized moment where you have this thought in your mind that you're just suddenly going to feel ready to do the thing. But if you think about it, does that moment really ever truly exist when it's related to being vulnerable? I don't think it does. It took me so long to hit record on my podcast because I was scared. All the fears were floating around in my head. What if it sounds awful? What if people don't like it? What if someone makes fun of me? And, what if someone criticizes how I practice or express my craft, which is a really personal thing. So I really want to take a minute to dig into those questions in a kind of a loving but brutally honest way, because there is no way that I'm the only one that has these fears and doubts. So let's start with the question, what if it sounds awful? If you've heard my other episodes, I've never used a microphone before. I've never used audio editing software. I've never truly recorded myself talking about anything. And I'd love to be that person that can watch 100 YouTube videos before I jump into something. But, between my ADD and just general impatience, that's just not going to happen. It doesn't even touch on my need to say, and so, in that, triple threat that I do. So, I have to cut so much of that out when I record because it's this filler that I'm learning to get over. But again, I'm brand new. So spoiler alert self, it's going to sound like crap until probably, I don't know, episode 10, 20, who knows how long it's going to take, but it is going to sound, maybe I don't want to say awful, but it's not going to sound great. It's not going to sound like I've been doing it for 5 years because I haven't. This is my first time doing it. So being scared of being judged for being a beginner, that's kind of, I wouldn't think well of somebody who was judging other people for being a beginner. So why do I care what they think about me? Because I kind of don't want them around anyway. So moving on to the next question that I struggled with before I started this. What if people just don't like it? Guess what? Someone out there is going to love to hate my podcast. Maybe they don't like my voice. They might not like my learning curve with audio quality. They might hate my topics and the way I practice or the way I talk about witchcraft and magic. Or sometimes I'm going to have an episode in here that's just simply meant to help and encourage anyone who wants to hear it that might not really have to deal with witchcraft at all. There are probably a dozen reasons out there why someone might dislike this podcast. And you know what? That's okay, because they aren't my people. And the sooner I stop worrying about people who don't resonate with my vibe, the sooner I can focus on and be more present for those who do. And in my personal shadow work, I've had to get really clear on the idea that if I'm focused on pleasing everyone in my life all the time, and I live in fear of upsetting that balance, I'm not living my life for myself. And I'm going to restate that because it's really important. So if you're living your life in a way where you never express your true self because you don't want to cause waves, you don't want to disappoint someone, you don't want to lose someone, you're living your life for everyone else and you're not living it for you. And by saying that, I'm not talking about, being a dick to people just to stir the pot or trampling on people's boundaries just for the sake of authenticity. But if everyone in the room votes vanilla and you're feeling cinnamon, then vote cinnamon. And I know this is kind of a minor example as opposed to, serious emotional vulnerabilities, but it's the same concept. It might not change the outcome that you voted cinnamon, but you're also not erasing yourself just to blend in. And who knows, there's probably somebody else in the room that loves cinnamon too, but they're too afraid to be the different one. That translates into every decision we make where we sell ourselves short just to please the room or to please others. This next question was also a really big one for me. What if someone makes fun of me or gives me a bad review, right? The dreadful thing that everybody who has an online business or does anything online where people can leave, reviews for whatever reason, we're all terrified of that. But you know what? If they do, then they do. Unless I choose to loiter in the pain of that moment and kind of allow myself to continually indulge in being a victim of it, life's just going to keep moving on. They'll move on. I'll move on. But the people who matter, my people, they're not going to care. And they may even come to my defense or offer support. So they do what they do. Let them move on. Don't loiter in it. Just move past it. And the final question I really struggled with when it comes to judgment and, starting this podcast, what if someone criticizes how I practice my craft or how I choose to talk about magic and witchcraft? And this is a big deal to me, as a practitioner who's sort of putting herself out there on display for anybody to listen to. And it's kind of a fun one to conquer too, though, because I had to take a minute to really remind myself that my practice is mine. So if someone doesn't like how I do things, cool, don't do it. Move along. You do you and have a nice day. It changes nothing about my path or my relationship with the energies I work with unless I let it. And I really needed to step back and root myself in this truth before I could find the guts to launch this podcast. Because, I spend so much time helping others do that in their own lives. I watch my clients and customers find that confidence that they need to take the next step in their practice or to take whatever action they're trying to take, to follow their own instincts rather than what a book or a peer says that they should or shouldn't do. In my opinion, at the end of the day, the true power of your practice isn't in the candle color that you use or the words that you say. It's your connection to the action itself. For example, and I'm probably over-explaining here, but, over-explaining is one of my superpowers, so hang with me. Let's say you're doing a money spell, and every book and every peer recommends using a green candle, but you feel really drawn to a red candle. But maybe you're new into practicing and you worry that people are going to say you're doing it wrong and it's not going to work and you have to follow tradition and give you any one of a million reasons why you must use the green candle. So you give in and you use the green candle, even though your gut really wanted red. Denying those intuitive hits in favor of doing things, quote unquote, the right way, that really dims your power. Not because green is wrong or red is better, but it's because you denied your own intuition in favor of someone else's rules. Okay, that was a bit of a tangent, but again, if someone criticizes your practice, assuming you're not out there harming people or animals, which I would never condone, try your best to say, who cares? They have zero power over your craft unless you hand it to them. For me, addressing these fears and doubts, it wasn't easy. It rarely is. I had to dig deep and recognize that my hesitation was deeply rooted in this truth that, I have a long history of gifting my power to people who don't deserve it. And I'm not going to go into the full backstory of, my guilt complex and inferiority complex and imposter syndrome, fear of being truly seen, because honestly, the why isn't as important as recognizing the fact that I have spent years and probably actually decades regularly defaulting to behavior that benefited everyone but me. And once I really felt the weight of that and recognized how much I bent myself to fit expectations, regardless of how much it drained my own power or impacted my practice, it's become so much easier to start the process of reclaiming that energy back, to take that power back. And so that barb of asking that fearful, well, what if, before taking any inspired step, it stopped stabbing as deeply once I gave myself permission to do things in my practice simply because it's meaningful to me. Does it still sting or trip me up sometimes? Of course. I still ask, what if? I'm human. There are some shadows that we'll probably always carry with us, but it's how we learn to integrate with those shadows and how much grace we're willing to extend to ourselves during that process that really determines the kind of relationship that we can have with them. Okay, getting back to our overarching theme, this fear of judgment. It is a seductive beast with a siren song, and it loves to pull us down into its clutches and, whispering every reason why we should stay small or stay silent or remain unseen. And the only way out is to just stop listening to it, which is easier said than done, but any step away from that is a step in the right direction. If I had submitted to that fear yet again, I would have waited weeks and months and who knows how long before putting out my first episode, which, more weeks of overthinking and more weeks of asking myself, is it good enough? Am I good enough? Is it interesting enough? Are people going to give a shit? All these things that they would have kept rattling around in my brain and just sucking my power and draining my power and just depleting me the longer I gave into it and the longer I empowered it. I finally asked myself the same question that I love to ask my clients. Who am I doing this for? This podcast, who am I doing it for? And do I truly think that the person I'm doing it for, the people I'm doing it for, do I truly think they're going to judge me? Because the people who love what I do, my friends, new people I'm meeting, my clients, people in the community who resonate with what I'm talking about, they're already here. They support me. They want me to show up, even when I stumble. They're going to laugh with me instead of at me. And they're going to be willing to give me loving space to be that beginner and celebrate my wins and offer me a safe space to process any losses. And they're going to cheer me on because they actually see me. And the more I put myself out there in alignment with my own truth, the more I'm going to meet people who meet these new minimum standards that I'm setting for myself and who I engage with and who I allow to share my energy. And thinking about those people in these moments of fear and insecurity that I have, it feels so much better than spending one more second wasting energy on the people who judge and tear me down. The ones I've wasted far too much time worrying about, the ones who barely acknowledge my efforts, no matter how hard I work, the ones who just, they take and take, but never actually give. They don't offer an unprovoked or selfless kind word, never really any real kind of support unless it somehow elevates them to do so. And I really recognize that by dialing down my self-expression in favor of, their perceived approval, I was feeding them. I'm pouring my energy into the wrong places and holding myself back. So all this being said, this is where I want to ask you, who are you feeding? Who gets the gift of your time, of your thoughts, of your hesitation? Who drains you and is given power over what you choose to do or not do? You're giving away power to people who don't deserve it. And worse than simply giving it away, they're probably using you to empower themselves. Energy vampires love to feed, and they'll feed on you strongly, whether consciously or not. They'll use your hesitation and your energy and your endless overthinking and poke at your vulnerabilities and really encourage you to stay small as fuel to alleviate their own stagnation. So let this be the day that you stop. Let this be the day that you decide, my energy belongs to me. My dreams, my work, my magic, my power, my expression, I'm keeping it. I am recording the damn episode. I'm starting the business. I'm dyeing my hair. Whatever it is, I'm doing the thing, whatever that means to you. Those iterations of ourselves that we keep under lock and key because of fear of judgment or rejection or failure, you already know what's going to happen if you stay in this spot. It's going to be more of the same, more waiting, more depletion, more self-loathing, more self-judgment, more reasons to convince yourself that it never would have worked out. It is a perfect self-fulfilling prophecy if you just stay where you are. So do the thing. Again, say the words, take the step, even if it's messy, even if it's awkward, even if you've never recorded an episode and it sounds like you're talking in some weird hallway, like underground, under a road in the middle of traffic. If it sounds terrible, where one part is loud and the next part's muted, just do it. Because moving forward imperfectly is still moving forward. And it is super cliche, but the first step truly is the hardest. But trust me, that relief that you feel in the second step, that growth in the third, the empowerment that you feel in the fourth, it is totally worth it. So to wrap this up, as I figured, this daily short was definitely not short. So we're just going to call it episode 2.5, since I already said episode 3 was going to be about 2025 and the energies of the hermit and the snake and the number 9. So, lesson learned, I'm going to stick to just shower thoughts and helpful tidbits and save the meat for the main course. As always, I really appreciate your patience as I grow with this podcast. I'm really happy to have you here, and I look forward to recording more content for you. Thank you for listening. Until next time, embrace the thresholds, trust the in-between, and remember, your magic is always yours to define.